everybody. Welcome. I'm Lauren Dockett, Psychotherapy Networker's senior writer, and I am so pleased to be here with you all and with the innovative and lovely Akilah Riley-Richardson. Hi, Akilah.
Hi.
Before Akilah and I get started, if you are so moved, go ahead and share in the chat where you're from. And remember that the chat is yours. It belongs to you. And as we go along, feel free to pop comments in for each other and also for us. And if you ask any questions, we'll do our best to get to them. For those of you who are meeting Akilah for the first time now, let me offer an introduction. She is an individual and couples therapist, certified client trauma professional, and founder of the Relational Healing Institute. She's also creator of the Pride model of practice and supervision, and someone fiercely dedicated to the healing of BIPOC relationships and BIPOC mental health. You can learn more about Akilah after this talk at her website, akilahrrichardson.com, and you can check out her story with us in the last November-December issue of the magazine. Here it is right here. Akilah, you wrote this wonderful piece called Reclaiming Black Imagination, the Pride Approach to Healing, and I'd like to start this talk with the story that you open the piece with, because I think many BIPOC therapists might appreciate and resonate with this story. It's you recounting your experience of freezing up before a discussion that's going to be broadcast between yourself and the well-known body-centered therapist, Resmaa Menakem. But it's not that you have jitters about appearing with the beloved Resmaa. Instead, you're experiencing this kind of full-on physical, emotional resistance to performing itself. And you end up sharing this with Resmaa, and he immediately gets your hesitation and understands you to mean performing in particular for the white gaze. That is what's giving you this pause. So let's start there, if you don't mind. What forms does that kind of performing take for you, and possibly for other BIPOC folks, including your clients? And from your perspective, how does it get in the way of true connection, especially in the therapy space?
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Delighted to be with you again, Lauren. For me, performance is kind of inevitable. Yeah, when you're living in a BIPOC body, there's a way in which I feel like persons in our bodies, we dwell in performance, captivity, liberation, and fugitivity all at the same time. And I want to say that performance isn't always about will. It isn't always about intention or meaning to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Just the circumstances that we occupy, yeah, from colonization and to capture to present day imperialism, present day discrimination and marginalization in various spheres. Performance is an inevitable part of living. I think for me, one of the things that I always should be authentic. Like sometimes when I'm teaching, I pause when I see myself going into performance and pause and try to get centered. But then a part of me grieves because just being in a space and existing in this body means you're often performing for the white gaze, as Resmaa says. Yeah. Even when you don't want to. Yeah. This language that we speak, yeah, these words that I'm using are constructed for and by the white gaze. So even when I don't want to do it, yeah, it's constructing how I show up. Yeah, the power of language. When I think about, how it limits connection, there's a way in which our ancestors connected so much to each other, to the land, to the earth, the natural forces. And there's a way in which whiteness and the white gaze takes us away from that kind of connection. Yeah. Even as we strive to connect with indigenous ways of being in the world and to find those means, because we've been so, how should I put it, stripped by the reality of colonization and having to exist in these systems, I think inevitably we never get the full experience. Yeah. So I want to say that performance isn't about being deliberately inauthentic. Yeah. For some of us, performance is survival and inevitable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's take that with us as we ask the next question. What starts to change? What do you and BIPOC clients of yours gain when you start looking elsewhere outside of white culture for healing or Western culture for healing? Perhaps even to your own Caribbean culture, to African and indigenous practices. What changes in the possibility for healing?
I love the word that you just used, the possibility, because there's a way in which in whiteness and in Western models and global North models, and quite frankly, I mean, I live here in the Caribbean, but the curriculum that we've all studied here is a global North curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So we are people in the Caribbean living out the white imagination. I want you just to take that in. We are living out the white imagination in therapy. This is not how our ancestors understood what it meant to heal. This is not how our ancestors understood what should be healed, right? And so we are performing that moment by moment. I think when we begin to acknowledge that there is something that the white imagination is marginalizing in our interaction, there are things that we don't even know. So that's the first, because just to go back to your question, yeah? When we begin to look to it, we have to first acknowledge that there is something that's being excluded or not privileged or not being seen free just by sitting in this particular therapeutic model. And so when I work with clients, I like them to kind of go back to the body. Yeah, that's so important. And I know I spoke about that in my article. But going back to the body, but not just in a, because I know a lot of therapies are pushing body-based work. And
Yeah.
I would say that for indigenous people and for example African people, and in particular here I want to refer to people who are Yoruba descendants, yeah, we understand the body as being very deeply connected to your soul and your ori.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just to give some context, a lot of us, especially in my part of the world, right, our ancestors would have been from the Yoruba tribe. And there was an understanding that each of us had an ori. Yeah. Your ori is your head, your destination, your calling, what you've come here to do, your creative potential.
Mm-hmm.
And the body is the mechanism by which you end. Body based work is not just cute, yeah, and stylish when we do it. Yeah, body based work is how you connect to your creative potential. So, in order to get close to true quote unquote cultural or indigenous practice or Caribbean based practice, one has to go back to the body, but go back to the body to resource, but also go back to the body to grieve. Because while this body might hold so much old knowings that our ancestors would have passed on to us, this body also holds the reality of colonialism and imperialism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I was there's this Tore Ade, Dr. Dr. Tope Ade Farrakhan in the US has some beautiful work and talks about the flexible imagination that we need for diasporic Africans and the fact
Mm-hmm.
that we are navigating the world very differently. Post-colonial people are navigating the world very differently. So when we are consulting the body, we are acknowledging that we are interacting with so many different things we have created here in this part of the world, rumblings and struggles with the reality of living in whiteness. There's so many different things. So consulting the body and also looking towards our culture is not as simple as it may seem because we're rumbling with so much. So when I ask people to consult the body, one of the things that I say is that as you journey, notice the areas of fugitivity in the body. Notice the things in the body that you feel inclined to do, but some part of you says, I shouldn't do this yet. And let's follow those points of fugitivity. Notice
Mm-hmm.
anything that feels strange. Sit with your culture and then also grieve because no matter how hard we try, right, we all living in whiteness in some ways. So we do get access to certain things, but then we also have to grieve the things that we can't access because of the reality that we live in.
Right. I love this, and I want to stick with your suggestions by asking you to just dive into your pride model, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
and take us through it. What makes the work that you're doing with this model so different from other therapy models? What are those 5 parts that make up PRIDE? Can you give it to us sort of quickly? I know. I know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I want to say that we, what birthed the pride model was me accepting that, as a therapist, I was trained in the white imagination and in white therapeutic models. And I have benefited in access. I benefited through access to those models, and I've seen the different ways in which, some of these models and thought leaders have allowed persons of color to be able to adapt certain things. And even when we adapt, sometimes we're still sitting, like we adapt, but we're still sitting on the white imagination
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because there are white ways of knowing the world that are still there. And so what I wanted to do was to create a generative space. I didn't even want to bring in my ideas. I wanted to create a generative space and have that space model some of the principles of Yoruba tradition. Yeah. But still create enough flexibility and openness for those who are sitting with me to resist and to connect in whatever ways that feel right for them. So the first thing, P, which is pivot. Pivoting is being able to look within, tracking, looking at what's coming up for you, just being with me in the moment. Yeah. And really, really connecting not only to your sensations, but to what you believe is like your reason for being here, your own Ori. But the difference here as well is that's a little bit different from other models, I think. I mean, of course, I might get to my I might hear differently later on, is that because I understand pride as a co-created decolonizing experience, and because I understand in African philosophy, I am because we are doing it together. Yeah. So I am pivoting as well, and the client is pivoting, and I am declaring what I'm seeing in my pivot. So I am declaring the ways in which I am seeing things emerging within me as I work with you, not in an effort to eclipse your process. So it's not about that, but it's because we're understanding it as a co-created decolonizing space. The second thing, which is a very powerful thing for me, is the rumbling. The rumbling is when people ask themselves, what I'm experiencing here, where is it coming from? But whose imagination are we living in? What structures and social systems are feeding, yeah, all these sensations in my body? When I think about, how I'm feeling, what systems have created this? And then for me as a therapist, I rumble with the client as well. No, there's an agreement even beforehand that we're going to rumble. So this is not me imposing this thing from beforehand, from the start. I say this is what the process looks like. I invite, would you like to do this kind of process with me? Because I know the rumbling is a co-created thing and I have to share. So I disclose to clients, what I think my next move should be, and disclose the ways in which, that particular act I sensing as part of the white imagination or something that may not feel coherent with this moment. Like I'm always trying to be very transparent about the ways that therapy is political, and every single move in therapy either marginalizes one way of knowing, yeah, or privileges another. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to disclose that. I think there's a way in which we come into therapy with models sometimes, and we present these things as default ways of being in the world. But
Right.
therapy is political, and I have to make that clear. So we are rumbling with all of that. Me
And what,
sharing
what is the
every move.
response, Akilah, to you making this clear that you are doing this? This is sort of a co-working environment here. What's
What
their feedback from your client?
with the clients that who embrace this, because we have to do the prep work beforehand, I can feel them feeling power in the room
Mm.
because I am beginning to disclose something that I would have never been able to disclose before. But now I'm ready to disclose it. I'm ready to out. I'm ready to out some of the politics of the field. So I'm like, this is what I'm feeling. And it's letting them know so that here's what here's what I'm do I do this when I'm thinking. So you might see this sometimes. Here's what I think the magic of this is. We all know what's playing here. Yeah. I am not the way I am saying this is what's happening. What are we gonna do with this? And the third phase is imagination. Now, I want to say that for me, like in African spirituality, some people align imagination. Some imagine with the term ashe. So I was reading this article by a Kenyan philosopher called Omedi, and he referred to imagination as ashe, which is typically in West African understandings, and it's this life-giving force. So I talk about the fact that we're moving into this generated life-giving space where I want you to not just tell me what the goals of the work should be, but tell me what you think my next move should be, what the process is going to be. What is your body summoning from the therapist as the next move? I actually recently was teaching for a particular organization, and I had a demo video kind of showing this, with me saying to a client, consult your body and ask your body, what's the next move? And I for me, what should I be doing next? For me, that ties into two things that I believe and I've learned. So there's this book called Sand Talk by Tyson Yonker Porter, where he talks about yarning and Aboriginal traditions and the way in which knowledge is created and generated in process. And even in other indigenous cultures, knowledge is relational and generational. There is no abstract knowledge, it's
Mm.
created in process. So there's no book to bring and say, okay, the next step is this, right? We are creating it right there in the moment, and I'm trusting this person on whatever their ori and their essence is telling them. Yeah, and whatever. And I also have huge respect for constrictions, right? So they're sharing with me what they think it should be, and sometimes it's not even what I should do, as you've seen in the article. People sometimes can access things in their culture.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is what I really want to be with. That sometimes it has nothing to do with me. People then realize that there are things in their own culture, even in this post-colonial space where they're navigating whiteness and having to engage in syncretisms and all those different things. There are things that we have generated here in this part of the world that they can yield and pull and draw on. And then we move to D, which is to develop, because I believe that, while yes, we've benefited from therapeutic models, I think each person has their own map for healing. And as I said, it's a political experience for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I tell people, this is your theory of healing. Yeah, this is your map. I'm not bringing anything to tell you this is how this should work. This is your map. So I'm documenting it. A big piece for me is being able to take what people are building and how they think I should move and what cultural traditions are coming forward, and I'm mapping it for the person, right? And then I
Mm-hmm.
present it to you. This is your theory of healing. I would say that when I do that part, I've seen somebody just gonna light up, and that person in particular who I'm remembering was living in just intense double consciousness, constantly living for the white gaze. Like for that particular person, she was really, really having a hard time with it. And when we presented it in that way, it was powerful for her. Like she felt like she was getting power in the moment.
Mm.
And then E is evolve. Yeah. And I want to say that, you know, there's this line, and I think I referred to it in the article. Octavia Butler says, everything we touch, we change. Everything we change. I always mix this up, but you know what I'm trying to say. Everything we change, we touch. Everything we touch, we change. But we're constantly evolving, right? And is changing, and I am changing in the process. So the question is, who are you now? Now that you have done this thing, you've pivoted, you've rumbled, you've looked at what systems are being privileged and what are being, like, and you've heard me engage in this kind of disclosure about the field in itself and how it's showing up to shape healing and how what I have to, like, all of those different things. And who are you now? You know, and when I started to work this way, I will admit I don't use this thing for every client, because some clients don't want to have this kind of work, which is fine. But when I have used it with those who were ready, I felt really good after, even though I was scared, because sometimes I think because I live too in the white gaze and the white imagination, I sometimes get scared of not having a white map to tell me, yeah,
Yeah.
the models are white maps, yeah,
Yeah.
telling me how to do this, the American map. But sitting with BIPOC from all over the world and being able to have them get their own map, I think is really powerful and important.
Do you feel comfortable sharing a result of one of those experiences where a client who we wouldn't name was
We wouldn't
able to
name.
do something right there?
Yeah, I'm seeing a face in front of me, and there was a word that she used at the end. Forgive me, I can't remember it. The interesting thing is I could feel what she said here. So I could tell you what the feeling, what it was. It was a release and a sensation of power. I can't give you the words because I can't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember there was a release and there was empowerment, and there was a way in which she saw possibility, because
Mm-hmm.
I think she was feeling very homeless, psychologically homeless.
Yeah.
And I think when she was able to do that, she felt more rooted in her body. But I can't remember exactly what she said, but I remember the feeling that I got when she was there. Yeah.
Is there, do you find that you need to explain to someone who's coming into a therapy practice how to tune into their own imagination, what that means? So are they thinking, I don't know how to imagine. I can't, it's hard, so
Yeah.
hard in this Western culture to be free to do that in a therapy room. Yeah.
I'm glad you asked that, because I want to say that the word imagination, while it may sound so simple, it's very, very thorny and very complex, because our imagination has been stripped from us. Yeah. I remember working with a client once who said, I don't know how to imagine, I just know how to survive.
Mm.
Yeah. And when I explain that imagination is political, imagination is how we create power for ourselves. I think I lost the question. There must be honest, Laura, but I'm going to continue. If I didn't answer it, please tell me. Uh, but some people, I feel like I need to do some teaching and some, you know, uh, some explanation of why being able to imagine is so critical to your anti-racist emancipatory liberation journey. But I also want to be realistic about imagination and the ways in which we are constricted by living in this space. Remember, I started by saying we are dwelling in performance,
Mm-hmm.
captivity, fugitivity, and liberation all at the same time. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
am not trying in any way to sell that I have found the magic. No, I resist that. I resist that, and I resist any models that suggest that we found the magic. No. What I'm doing may work for some and may not work for some. And it's beginning of a process, even for me, and it's been changing and unfolding all of the time. And so it, for some clients, they feel ready, for some clients they don't. And when they don't, you hold back and you just be with people and wherever they need to be in their journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm remembering back with one of the clients that you worked with. I want to say were they an LGBT client in your
Yeah,
article?
yeah,
And they were suddenly able to imagine a space where they were celebrated and there was acceptance and,
yeah,
and they were,
yeah,
it was a
yeah.
wonderful.
Celebration. Yeah, that's there. I just remember that. Yeah. And it I want to stress that as a therapist, I also have a responsibility to let people know of the, how should I put it, the reality of our social systems. Yeah. And the ways in which sometimes we pay the cost for imagination. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes I want to be very clear. I do not want to be a practitioner that says that I found the magic pill. Everything has a cost. And we understand in this kind of body that sometimes you pay the cost for it. And I will not at any point in time vilify or pathologize any person who struggles to imagine, because sometimes you can't, because imagination is sometimes in direct opposition to survival.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what I do know is that in my therapeutic space, I want to sow the seed of possibility. This is possible, even if it's just here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is possibility. And I'm using my body. I'm using my body, and I'm learning now to use this accent in a way that liberates, because at first I thought that this accent was the thing that would hold me back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought that when walking into certain spaces, because it's not the American accent or the European accent, it'll be the thing that holds me back. Now I'm understanding that showing up with this body, with this face, with this accent is exactly how I'm supposed to show up in the world. And I encourage any other person, use your body, use your social location, not in an exploitative, make money kind of way, but in a way to really, just show up for people and help people to connect.
Mm-hmm. Any advice you have for other BIPOC practitioners that are experiencing frustration in the therapy world with the current offerings, for their clients. How can they channel your own enthusiasm and belief that they can sort of take those steps, shift the way they work to create a space to help their clients expand their ideas of themselves and have more hope and fully be? Did it take you time? Was there a certain day where you were like, no more? What advice would you offer, I guess, for frustrated BIPOC practitioners?
I would say that we all need to remember, I'm just feeling into this, making sure I'm not in performance.
Yeah.
Or as little performance as possible. Channel, if you understand what our ancestors lived with, they lived with that understanding that each person had creative potential. I'm not trying to get anybody to be a mini Akilah. Yeah. Find your voice, sit in your body. Yeah, that's what I want to facilitate. I if I had my dream, I'd sit with therapists all the time and have them, create their own theories of healing and have them sit and imagine. And because I think each therapist needs to find their ori, find their own center, their own creative potential, and from the ground up, generate and also co-create with clients. So my advice, quote unquote, which people should take or discard as they choose, is to remember who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Thank you so much, Akilah. Okay, people who are watching and are intrigued, go to, let me show you the cover. If you get it at home, it was your November, December 2023 Psychotherapy Networker. Page 54, it starts. There's Akilah. And she takes you in more detail through her prod model, and she shows you literally what she's doing in the moment of practice with the client as they're going through the model. And it's really illuminating and I love that you broke it down that way. It's very, very helpful for everybody to see too. So thanks for bringing this fabulous new perspective to us, Akilah. We appreciate it.
And thanks for being a part of liberation work, because you being you and the organization being what it is, allowing a different kind of voice, allowing this accent to show up and share this work. Yeah, thank you for stepping into this brave work with me. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.